Just 9 days to go until the federal election. Let's bring in our panel. Former Labor Minister Stephen Conroy, former President of the Victorian Liberal Party Michael Kroger. Stephen, you're feeling a bit more positive about Labor's prospects. These polls look quite convincing, don't they?
Well, look, I'm positive about Albo's performance. He's now won all three debates. Those early hiccups are now behind him. He's in a good groove. His messages are strong. I'm 100% behind his decision to say, I support this $1 increase per hour for every worker. I think that's a strong message. Labor wants to see a real wage increase while the cost of living pressures are so high. And Scott Morrison appears to be saying, I want a pay cut for people while these cost of living pressures. So I think Albo is honed in on the issues that people are listening to. There's a lot of colour and movement around other issues, but I think Albo is on the topics the Australian public are interested in. The poll, it's a new poll. Lots of issues around it, its methodology, but what it does show consistently is that Scott Morrison is on the nose, particularly in his own core heartland seats. And that's reflected whether it's in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane or Tasmania. Scott Morrison is the biggest drag on the Liberal Party vote. People just don't believe what he's selling.
Yeah, and we don't really need that poll either, Michael, to show us where the Prime Minister is going, where Scott Morrison is going in this campaign. He's not going to Wentworth, he's not going to Kooyong or North Sydney. Where he's campaigning is sort of emblematic of a leader who knows where he might be on the nose.
Or it might be emblematic of a leader who goes to seats where the polling shows there are more undecided voters than in the Teal seats, where I think there are very few undecided voters at this time, because people in those seats are extremely politically sensitive. They spend a lot more time talking about politics and looking at politics because they have more time to spend than those people who have jobs and mortgages and children to look after in Middle Australia. I mean, no, he hasn't been to what I call the Prince Harry seats. No, he hasn't, because he's concentrating on Middle Australia. So that's what's actually happening here. But to go back to Stephen's point, it may be, Kieran, it may be that what the polls are showing in that it's difficult for the government to convince people it needs another 3 years. It may be, as I've said all along, that fourth terms are hard, that people think 9 years is enough, and that Morrison at this stage hasn't yet convinced people that they need another 3 years. Now, the more they talk about economics and detail of economics, the better Scott Morrison's going to go between now and next Saturday. And believe it or not, there's a long way to go. There still are a lot of undecided voters. I mean, Albo's comments about wages are just the height of ignorance. He's talked about real wage increases and then says, oh yes, I support a 5.1% increase, which is the same as the nominal rate of increase in inflation. So all Albo's doing is saying, I support wages not going backwards, not the real increase that he's been talking about. It's pretty clear he has very little understanding of economics and has shown very little interest in it. And that's Labor's big problem, and that's where Josh Frydenberg and Scott Morrison have to, pay their heaviest attention over the next 9 days.